So friends, torque converters, the topic on everybody's mind. How do they work? What is their reason? What are they used in? All those questions and more will be answered in this video. Okay, torque converters. What you got to understand is transmissions and engines work on friction. You don't want too much friction because too much friction will make too much heat. It will cause gears to bind. It will cause the spikes on gears to break. Too much of anything is always a bad thing. We have the engine, right? The engine's spinning. It's got a drive line coming out. Output shaft is actually the technical term. So you can picture yourself having an output shaft and say this is the end of it, right? And so the output shaft is spinning like this, spinning like this, spinning like this. So this is going to fit into that bell housing. And there's going to be two major big plates that are going to fit together. This is the big bell housing thing I'm talking about. This is what is really a torque converter. This is what comes to the engine, right? This is where that shaft is coming through. And there's all these bearings and there's all these things. But you got this thing called a turbine. Now you might wonder why I have fans down here. These fans are essentially that turbine. So picture your transmission being like a jet engine, okay? A very dumbed down jet engine. So you got your turbine in there spinning from the output shaft. It's flowing through and through. If you notice, this has fins on it. That's not just for a look. That's the fins that spin the fluid through the system. They propel the fluid from the front of the transmission to the rear of the transmission. This is how it works. This is where that fluid motion comes from inside the transmission. So we've got that settled, okay? So how does this all work? So when you park a car, you're going to create friction and heat and all these different things. And you're not wrong, but it's designed to work this way. Now you can see here, we got all these bearings and you can't see them here, but there are these things that'll fit in here called clutch pads. And clutch pads are kind of like the brake pads on your bike. So give you brake rotors on your car, all right? The brake rotors on your car have like a very fine, yet like kind of jagged edge that compresses on your brake rotor. It's the same idea of this. There's going to be clutch pads in here, and these clutch pads are going to compress together when you stop the vehicle. So what happens is your output shaft in the engine is still spinning, it's still cranking. This is spinning. Right here though, this is where it stops. See, this right here is going to stay stationary when you're in park. Because when you're in park, you're locking up the rear wheels. Okay, assuming you have a rear-wheel drive vehicle, let's just assume that for this case. This shaft is going to go to the rest of the transmission with all its gears and all its glory, okay? But that transmission is connected to the rear axle on your car via a drive line, and I've talked about those before. And when that drive line is locked up, this is going to lock up based on clutches and the clutch pads. So this is going to stop spinning, but this is still going to be spinning. So we see that we have this fan spinning, right? And this fan is not spinning. If we put this one right in front of that one, see how this one is now spinning? But now they're compressed together, right? Now you have a basically 1-to-1 ratio spinning. So this is basically essentially what's happening when force is taken off of the drive line. That's what happens when you're in park. Engine's gonna keep going while this one's gonna stop. You know, this one re-engages, right? It's going again, it's going again. So now you got a 1-to-1 ratio. The fans are basically spinning at the exact same speed. And then now we're stopped. So this is that picture I was showing you guys before. And I'm going to go through things a little bit more in detail now. I'd rather show you with the mouse here so I can point to what I'm talking about. So we already know this is the front cover. This is where the drive shaft is coming, output shaft is coming from the engine. We got these bearings in between. If you know anything about bearings, bearings are just there to put a little bit of space between things to make sure that the metals don't wear on each other when they're spinning, stuff like that for. So that's what a bearing is. Anyway, so we got all this, right? I told you there's going to be clutch pads in here, just about right in this thing. I told you we have these fins, right? Notice a important detail. These fins here go in this direction. These fins here go in this direction. This is very important. This is where the actual torque conversion is created. So I told you the fluid's pumping through here. There's no actual real pump in a transmission, like not like an electronic one, nothing like that. This is the pump. The output shaft from the engine is the pump pumping the fluid through the engine. Like I said, this is like a jet engine. This is propelling everything through it, all the way to the back, through this right here, into the gears, all back here. So now the fluid is spinning in this direction. But this stator, it's called a stator, so runs off a clutch. This spins in the opposite direction. So why is that? So this fluid's coming through. This reverses the direction of the fluid, which increases the torque. I couldn't tell you exactly why, but this is the way torque converters work. If you just had these fins, just do this. If you just had this, and then these two plates locked up, and then you started the car again, you'd have to put a lot of like force from the engine to like get your car stopped from a go. This is what gets your car rolling. You know how like you can take your foot off the brake when you're in drive and you're rolling down the road? This is what's happening. When you take your foot off the brake, these are no longer compressing, these two plates, okay? When these two plates are no longer compressing, this clutch is released, which means that this stator is free to move, which means that this fluid is now reversing direction here, which is now increasing the torque. And then because this is, you also, so it's not even just the fluid spinning that has more like force on it. This, if you can see right here, it's teethed right here. This is actually on the shaft going to the transmission. This is what's spinning the gears in here. So this torque is directly affecting those gears inside your transmission. So you're going from essentially no torque to a ton of torque. I think it's like something like 10 times the torque that you'd normally make if you just took your foot off the brake and didn't have the stator here. So that's how this works. Fluid flows through here, gets changed in direction by this, increasing torque, and then it goes right into the transmission, which I will cover in a later video. But that's how a torque converter works essentially. This is just one part of a transmission. This is the front of it. This is, like I said, where it bolts right onto the engine. Actually, these are right here. It mounts to the engine essentially. So that's how this works. Eventually I'm going to make a video about automatics and manuals, but I hope for now this was a little bit informative, and I hope that you could follow at least a little bit of what I was trying to show, because it's kind of difficult, especially if you don't have like an actual real display to show how this works. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys will like and subscribe, and hopefully I can do more content like this in the future and it can be a little bit more high quality. Thank you.